Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer, the man you've been waiting to hear. Rajiv Malhotra ji graces our channel after a period of a few, I think, weeks or if not months. And we are going to talk about the coronation that took place at common man's expense in United Kingdom. This has some very interesting outcomes from this. There are many perspectives, and it also shows you the blind spots that people have. And Rajiv Malhotra ji is going to lay bare all the hypocrisies, all the other things that we find absolutely not appropriate for the 21st century. So we are actually taking a stand here on this. So let's welcome our guest of the day, Rajiv Malhotra ji. Rajiv ji, Ram Ram and Namaskar.
Namaskar, Shri. It's always a pleasure to be on your show because you give me a no holds bar. Just open. I can say what I want. So that's what I'm going to say. So now, everybody is very excited about the pageantry, especially the Western media. I would say the Anglo-American,
Yes.
British and American, because Americans see themselves as sort of the continuation of the Anglo civilization.
Even though they got kicked out.
What happened?
No, you're doing fine, sir. You're doing fine.
Yeah. Okay. So the Anglo-American civilization is sort of what I'm going to refer to. Now, this coronation is nothing but mythology ritualized. It's like any ritual. There's all this very solemn and very sacred, very holy, something lofty. We can't touch it. Some of it doesn't, we can't really fully understand, but it's beyond us. It's very high. That kind of a aura of is given there. And the mythology, this old history of 1,000 years, but sanitized so that it's all positive and all good, great things happening. Not all the cruelty, not all the slavery, not all the meanness, and also all the barbaric and kind of illogical and irrational behavior that the history is full of. So, for example, there is this big stone in the ceremony. They bring this stone in every coronation and every big event because it's a 1,000-year-old stone from Scotland, and one of their ancestors brought it in some victory or whatever. So it's this sort of symbolism, copy paste, cut paste from here and there in history, put together into a myth and ritualized. That's really what it is. Now, I have no problem with people celebrating their history, their grandeur with pageantry. I think it's fantastic. I believe in all that. But do not have any mistake about the fact that this is idolatry. This is the worst kind of idolatry. We deify the divine and humanize them so we have equal access. Like the avatar comes to be accessible to us. So we humanize them. The divine gets humanized. Okay, but here the human being gets turned into God. He is, according to the Anglican Church, he's the head of the Anglican Church. And according to that, the King of England, who's the head of the Anglican Church, is God on earth. So he is considered like a devata or a deity of some sort. So this is idolatry. This is pageantry of an enormous scale. This is white supremacy. This is supremacy of a race that has considered itself superior to others. And remember that the reason they're able to do all this is because they've got a whole lot of money. And where did the money come from? We should talk about it. The chariot, the vehicle on which he rides, was shown, is 4 tons of gold. 4 tons of gold. And this chariot is only used for coronation. It's not like everyday use. So imagine they have so many very special purpose artifacts which are immensely expensive. Of course, they have Kohinoor. We all know that. But that's just one little thing. The amount of treasure they have. And he's supposed to be, he's now the head of the Commonwealth. Very proud he's head of the Commonwealth. But what is common among all these countries? I don't know what's common among them, except that they were all slaves. They were all colonized. And where is the wealth? The wealth all got looted. So there is no commonwealth. Okay, there is no commonwealth because the wealth got looted. And that's how these crowns and this gold here and there and the glitter and the palaces, that's all from colonial loot. Let's be very honest about it. And the interesting thing is the same liberal media whether it is CNN, MSNBC, BBC, all of that, would go to a place like India and they would criticize it. They would say, oh, where are the Dalits? These guys have done all this, and they'll bring in a Dalit and interview him. I mean, why didn't the coverage from BBC and CNN bring in, 5 or 10 people from the colonies to say, what's your point of view? Can you tell us where this guy, what is your view of history of British royalty? That ought to be there too. But if it were India, the spiritual angle would be criticized as irrational. These irrational people, because we are scientific, logical West, and these natives, they're illogical, they're myth. But this whole thing there's nothing rational about it. There's nothing rational about it. There's nothing scientific about it. Not that rituals are bad, rituals are fantastic, but it should be a level playing field. The media should give equal coverage, equal respect to non-Western, non-Anglo-American rituals and stories and so on. That would be fine. So this is my only point. The only gripe I have is that this is very different from the liberal media's coverage of any big celebration, any festival, any big thing in India. It would be considered something bad for the environment because these people are irresponsible. They are full of illogical ideas and myths, and they are exploiting. The lens of exploitation, the lens of bad for the environment, the lens of being irrational are the lenses through which they look at rituals of other people. But there was no trace of that when they were talking about, who is a second cousin and who is this one's son and who is this one's nephew, and all the little nitty-gritty, irrelevant details, making a big thing out of this family, one family. So I have a serious problem with that. I also see this very condescending attitude towards others. They're given a token role, some military people from various colonies here and there, some symbolic people of color here and there. Of course, Meghan outcast because she's black, and so on. So this is a big reminder of the hypocrisy, and that's my main posture about all this. That this is not history from below, which is what the subalterns and the left want. History from below, not history. They don't want history from above of the elitists. They want history from below. So where is the below? Where are the subjects of the empire? Where are the ordinary folks? Their history, their stories. Where is that in an important event like this? It's certainly a fair question, but I didn't see a whole lot of this this kind of contrarian view from wokeism and from the left. I didn't see that happening, because at the end of the day, they're bought off, they're sold out. They too are part of this sense of superiority. The whites, even if they are guilty, feeling guilt, and they get into wokeism to clean their guilt. But on an occasion like this, they want to celebrate that, it's our king and all that stuff. So you could see MSNBC's most liberal people and CNN's most liberal people going gaga about this deification. Now, another thing you should notice is when Christopher Columbus, when there was his anniversary, I think it was the 400th or 500th, it was 1992. So 1592 to 1492 to 50. So it was the 500th anniversary of Columbus's 1492 arrival in the Americas. In this 1992, I remember very clearly, because my kids were going to school at that time right here, there was a huge upheaval that we should not celebrate Christopher Columbus because he was actually a bad guy. He was a person who had slaves. He killed a lot of people. He plundered. So he was a colonizer. He was all of that. All his human rights abuses came out because the Native Americans had been slaughtered by him. So, and this became cool for the liberal left to protest on Columbus Day. Many people don't want to be celebrating a holiday. They want to treat it like a normal day. And every year on Columbus Day, this thing is revived about, this anti-Columbus rhetoric, anti-Columbus narrative comes out. Why is there nothing similar anti-crown? I mean, the British crown did far worse than Christopher Columbus, because Columbus was one man and he had a certain period, and during that he did all these things. There's nothing before him, and after that he died. There was no dynasty, and the scale of what he did was, while it was horrible, nothing compared to what the British did. in terms of the number of the millions of people they colonized, they killed, they enslaved, and the cruel treatment and extorting money out of them, turning rich nations like India into poor people and becoming very rich as a result of themselves becoming very rich. So that I would have hoped that the left would have stood up and done something for this occasion, similar to what was done by the left in the case of Christopher Columbus. So those are my comments, opening comments, and I want to make sure I clarify, Sri, that I'm not against rituals. I love rituals. I'm not against history of pageantry. I'm not against any civilization celebrating the good parts of its greatness and its glory to feel nice and positive. But I want a level playing field, and I don't get that for my culture, and that's why I'm pissed off. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. A couple of observations, sir. First off, in 1857, a composer called 𝗜𝙧𝙤𝙬 wrote a composition called Pomp and Circumstance, and you can hear it on almost once every week in any classical music channel in the United States or anywhere across the world. And it is, that is something that I think has stuck with all of us in the United States, which somehow we still look up to, even though America is not a Commonwealth, but member of the Commonwealth. I think Canada is still, that we look up to them as if these are our kings, and that it's okay to be snubbed by them. In fact, there was a phrase called snub appeal. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes,
in the 80s and 90s. We would take it lying down if the Europeans came and said, what do you have? We have culture, we have this, we have that. And, America would meekly say, we have Coca-Cola, jeans. But it was a good answer, though. I mean, it showed you that that America knew how to market something. But overall, this Pomp and Circumstance was written in 1857, ironically. And I think Lord Curzon kind of adapted it during his viceregalty. I think around the beginning of the 20th century, he was in India. He kind of made this whole thing that we have to have the same pomp here. And, the viceroy, I think the king visited around that time. There was a lot of this kind of pomp and circumstance that was on display in India. And I think even after that, only you had this new Delhi, Lutyens Delhi, everything built around after that. After all, the Rashtrapati Bhavan today used to be the viceregal palace. Everything, like you said, sir, is fine. But does it make sense in today's day and age when Britain is under one of the highest percentages of inflation? They have been shafted left and right. They probably now leaving Brexit seems like a bad idea because there is no price control. They had some kind of a floor for some of these things. That's all gone away, and now they are practically searching what to do, clueless about it, and why do all this stuff. They could have done the same thing in a more modest manner, don't you think, Rajiv ji?
So, the thing is that what the British people do with their own money is their concern and their business, and they're right. I mean, fine. But I think the logic is that they think that this is part of the brand which brings tourism, that the royal family is sort of like, pardon the comparison, but Mickey Mouse for Disney, that's a brand, and what he's up to, what Mickey Mouse is doing today and what he said and all that, and all those Disney characters, that is the myth that brings tourists and makes them billions of dollars. So I think a certain part of Britain's economy, large part of the economy is tourism, and there is this myth of royalty, which is at the top of their tourism. So there is a brand management between the English language, giving them a lot of clout around the world, and the royal family. British people tell me when I ask them this, they say that it is supposedly the citizens have been sold on the idea that jobs and tourism economy depend on the royal family as a kind of a myth and brand. So that's how I think they justify doing what they're doing. My main concern is not the welfare of their domestic economy, that they have enough people to worry about it. I'm more concerned that the hypocrisy of the left in going along with this whole celebration and all that, or giving a very minor knock on the wrist to kind of scold them a little bit, compared to what harsh attacks that India gets for its display of glitter, glamour, celebration of festivals, royalty, success, whatnot, as though we are not entitled to it, but somehow the white guys are more entitled to it. I do want to say one thing. Pre-colonial times, Europe was very poor, and there wasn't this kind of glamour. They had atrocious stuff. The medieval era, they had all kind of ways of extorting and so on. But because their domestic economies were very modest, very poor, there's only so much you could squeeze out of those people. It's only when they got into colonies, that those colonies were very rich, that they finally had loot on a very large scale. Before that, the loot was only domestic, and it was not a whole lot. So you see the lifestyles of the French kings and the British royal family and all that, up to, say, prior to, say, the 1700s, it's actually quite modest. It's actually, they're not living the great life. And this ought to be pointed out. This projecting back 1,000 years, so many 1,400 years, as though it was always something grand, is a baloney. It's all fake. Because this is very recent times, at the expense of the colonies, that these guys have been able to become so filthy rich.
Rajivji, even during Queen Victoria's reign, we had prisoners being housed right underneath the palace, in the dungeons of the palace. Even in Queen Victoria's reign. I mean, we are talking about 200 years ago, sir.
Yeah, and when you go to the palace in Versailles, I mean, we are changing the subject. That France is different, I know, but the point is still
no, it's not. I was going to draw those parallels.
When you go there and you do a tour, and you want to go to the restroom, they'll tell you the restroom is out there, and the guide will point out, and he mentions that the palace had no restrooms. And to relieve themselves, the people who would perform, they would go behind the curtain and relieve themselves. And that was a state of royalty in those days. I mean, they were not into bathing. That's why they developed perfumes in England, and the royalty in Britain were not clean people. I mean, they were dirty people. And when they came to India, they learned all this stuff about, champi, the head bath became shampoo. So the English language introduced basic lifestyle from India, which was sort of so glamorous and so exciting for them. If you read the literary accounts of ordinary people, not government people or missionaries, but ordinary travelers from England in the 1700s and 1800s, they are so much in awe of India. And so we've been impoverished from that in the world myth about who we are and who everybody is. And while people like this, that's why there's a burning thing in me as an Indian, that how the hell do they get away with this kind of a display, which is fake? It's based on looted wealth. It is not a true reflection of their entire history. And if you were to look at their human rights violations, if the wokists would apply the same criteria and say that structures that were built by elitists ought to be dismantled, because those are structures of abuse and of oppression, which continues today. And that is why that is the argument you're being used to dismantle Hindutva and all that, because supposedly those are structures of elite people. So if you were to apply the same criteria, you would be wanting to dismantle the royal family as a structure of oppression and elitism, which caused a lot more havoc around the world than anybody else, I can tell. That standard of wokeism and the call to action of that wokeism has done for other people needs to be looked at and applied to the royal families also.
Rajivji, you mentioned one thing about, people being drawn for tourism purposes. When they see these things, they want to go visit all these, scenic spots, such as the, Buckingham Palace or any other thing. I mean, even Eiffel Tower. But the crime in these places has been going up steadily, Rajivji. I have been going to Europe, and every time I go, I'm a little bit more scared, because there is so much more aggressive panhandling, and there is some effort to try and curb that. But there are areas that if you accidentally get caught, it is really a truly scary experience. I mean, I don't want to mention cities because I don't want to, trash one or the other. But in general, the crime has gone up in all these places. Plus, Europe, UK, they're all very expensive to visit as a tourist. At least even for America, sir. I don't know what your personal experience has been. There is something more that they need to do to, if you want to be a tourist destination, there is more that needs to be done. Even including, making sure that the law and order is better. I mean, we are just still hearing about grooming gangs, and the United Kingdom hasn't cracked down on it. So I'm just giving an example to say that there are concerns that they need to first take care of before they can even say, okay, well, we had a coronation. Oh, you want to see where he stepped foot on this place? All that nice things that people can come up with, these narratives, like, Apple bus tour. You know what I'm talking about, right? If you go to New York, you have this Apple tours, like a bus that are red Apple. You just get on and get off, and you can go visit the whole place. Same thing exists in every city in Europe also. But my point here, limited point, is that they need to clean up a lot before they can say, come visit us. This is just my 2 cents. I don't know how your experience has been.
Yeah, the thing is that when a tourist goes, a tourist looks at what's the good thing I can do, not what is the real thing, because that's not tourism. So tourism is, from the tourist point of view, it's a kind of escape, because, I want to get out of my life and do something exciting, fight the boredom, too much hard work. I've earned this so many weeks of vacation, so I want to go and enjoy. So the fact that a place can give me, an experience is what I care about. The fact that there is a whole underclass and there are poor people and there's violence and crime, as long as I don't face it, it's okay. I mean, I would say that is the tourist everywhere. I mean, the tourist who goes wherever he goes, he is not really looking at the real economy, and as long as he pays money and gets a good experience. So the tourism side of Europe is not affected by, unless the violence becomes so bad that tourism is affected directly by it. That can happen at some point in time. But I suppose right now, if you stay in very expensive places, very limited movement here and there, it's pretty good. So that's not their issue. The sustainability of the system is partly the internal demographics. There's a dramatic Islamization of Britain and France and Germany. And, I'm doing a mini series with a US national security expert, Joel Finkelstein. The first episode came out today. There will be 4 episodes. The next one is actually about Hindu-Muslim riots in England. He's an expert who goes into the dark web and figures out who's funding and who's behind it. And he's got some amazing revelations about who is behind this Hindophobia, including in Britain. So that is relevant to your question.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that is relevant to your question, because this civic unrest, which has been not only tolerated but in some ways encouraged by the British government as a sort of political correctness for some reason, and this mayor of London, this fellow, and BBC. I mean, these are topics for separate discussions that we ought to have, totally separated from the royal family, because I think these are huge issues that the British people have to come to terms with.
Takeaway: what could they have done better so that they could have still had a certain amount of pomp, but at least there is some sensitivity. And I'm sure they'll come and say, well, wait a minute, a Panditji came and blessed the royal couple, but they've been married for what, donkey's years. I mean, I'm just trying to see this. I'm trying to see the relevance. This is just a titular post. Of course, they get every week or something like that updates from the Prime Minister, and we know all that stuff. We've watched The Crown. Beyond that, how do you think the royalty needs to kind of evolve? See, you don't see this kind of stuff in, for example, Sweden. Sweden has a monarchy also. You don't see them do these kinds of things. At least that's how I see it. I don't know if you agree with me or disagree with me. Is there anything that they can perhaps take away from the whole criticism? We're not saying that you shouldn't do it. They just, do it in a way that probably is less pomp and less circumstance.
See, I think that Americans have something to do with it. Americans, English speaking, and thinking of this country as an Anglo-American civilization rather than a French-American civilization, or a Swedish-American civilization, or a German-American civilization. It's an Anglo-American. So it's specifically Americans have a special bond for England, and hence the royal family is a kind of a glue, a link. This is part of the white supremacy kind of pinnacle of greatness and glory that continues to this day. And I think given the power of the United States, that is what makes the British royal family have an edge over, say, Sweden or any other royal family. I mean, there are plenty of royal families around the world. And you could argue, why not, the royal family of Thailand or something like that. I mean, they have pomp and glory and glitter and all that stuff, but it's sort of localized and it's contained and it's more
not
sort
on
of,
CNN.
it's not on CNN for days and days. And you don't have all these, whether it's Anderson Cooper or whether it's the MSNBC, all this one liberal left-wing guy after another going, ga, 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 royalty. What the hell happened to their left-wing ideology? I mean, that is what strikes me as a bunch of hypocrisy.
Out of tune, exactly, out of sync, and off key.
So the way I frame the story is partly it's the royal family's hypocrisy that needs to be pointed out. Partly this whole Church of England, Protestantism, there head of that believes in this sort of person who's by birth. Privileged by birth, which they're supposedly against in India, the birth-based, caste and all that. They're supporting this guy as the head of their whole, church the whole church, birth-based. And that's a hypocrisy of the church. Then you look at the hypocrisy of American left. There are into this, as sort of the ultimate glorifying moment in our recent times. Not a single word of criticism. I didn't see any of these liberal left-wing channels invite a contrarian view and say the way they would if they were covering some, if they were covering, some big event in India of some kind. They would always have some Dalit, some Muslim, some minority who has got a gripe, will give you a contrarian view and will try to spoil the fun. And so guys like me have to be called in to sort of defend and all that. But none of that happened here. Sanitized. And I talked to some people in London and they said there's no protests allowed. I mean, very, very few symbolic, some guys standing there with some placards, but nothing, no parade, no big anything allowed. Very subdued. Authorities always telling students, hey, now is not the time because all the international cameras are here. This is the same culture that says that journalism and media are being muzzled in places like India and we don't have free speech. So I'm talking about that kind of a global scale hypocrisy on display. That's my message.
Thank you, sir. And I totally agree with you. This whole thing about, even funerals are made a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you contrast that with Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, his mother's funeral. He was there in the morning, he did the rites, and then he was back at work like in 2-3 hours later. There was nobody there. It was just him, his personal, his small group of family members, and that was it. You see that nobody wants to say that, oh wow, this was such a simple occasion. See, this is where the if a white man does it, it's okay, but a brown sahib does it, it's not okay. What kind of stuff is this? And here the interesting thing is the left liberal, the Black Lives Matter. I didn't see any peep from them also. That is a bit of a surprise to me.
Right. No, that is the whole point. That their whole wokeism is very selectively applied, and so it's occasions like this we can point out that it's all hypocrisy. And thank you very much for bringing it up.
Yeah, woke joke. We can have some questions now. I think there were a few people who are asking some questions. Let's see. Kumarila Bhatta wants to know, Khanna is playing both sides on SB 403 bill. What are your views on him? I have already expressed mine. You go ahead, sir.
So I think he's a hypocrite. I mean, you are from California, so you'll have more to say, but he's and the national media, or as a Democratic kind of a spokesman, he took a lot of in the early days, he took a lot of money from Indian Americans because he was not so famous with the mainstream. He used that, got himself elected. And, he's had a mixed posture on our Hindu culture issues when it comes up. When it's a choice between Islam and Hindu issues, he always favors the other side. He's one of those who voted in favor of a bill to criminalize Islamophobia in the US Congress and not include that the same treatment should be given to Hinduphobia or Christian phobia or Jewish phobia, but only Islamophobia should be considered a federal crime anywhere in the world, not just in the United States, anywhere in the world. Imagine the audacity of that. And he's one of those who supported it. So I'm not too impressed by this sort of double talk.
So when they want to add Islamophobia, why are they missing out on other things such as Hinduphobia or even broader kafirs? Anybody is a kafir who's not a practicing Muslim, and therefore some interpret that all kafirs shall be put to death.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of a nonsense is there in this religion.
I would argue, in fact, instead of saying I'm not Islamophobic, I would argue that fear of Islam is something that Islam wants in the kafirs. I would argue that the Islamic history has been put fear in the kafirs. The kafirs should be afraid of you. You should be so aggressive that the non-believer should be afraid of you. So if the non-believer has fear of Islam, which is what Islamophobia is, why is that bad? Why wouldn't the person who's being attacked and being told that you better convert or else, why isn't he entitled to saying, hey, I'm afraid? What's wrong with that? I mean, I think that the intellectuals, in quotes, who are into this whole discussion on Islamophobia and all that should come out clean. I mean, either we should ban the phobia, the negativity, the denigration of all faiths. I'm for that. Or we should say there's free speech, open, talk whatever you want for or against anybody. Then you cannot protect, Islam as a special case. So that's my concern. Again, lack of a level playing field and too much hypocrisy.
And also, I'm a little surprised, Rajivji, about the muteness being displayed by the majority white population of United States. For some reason, they are not, they're not expressing some of the, they're not disapproving some of these things, which is a little bit of a surprise to me, Rajiv, because, right now, these people have gotten so brazen that they want to take pot shots at Hindus, specifically aiming a bill at Hindu Americans and saying that we discriminate when there is no proof of it. In fact, they have lost the only case that they tried out in the court. Yet Seattle has passed a law, and a couple of universities in California have done it. The Brandeis, which is a Jewish-run organization, has, in fact, it was the first one to do it. My point in all these things, sir, is that why this unequal application of law and filter that people are looking at with various cultures? I have as much right to practice my religion as somebody else.
So, I think here we have to take some responsibility as Hindus, because Hindus haven't studied this issue the way others have. We haven't come together. Hindus are more likely to be the lone, out there, be a maverick and fight on your own and get yourself glorified and all that. The leadership haven't come together into cohesive institutions and long-term strategies in a unified way, the way the Jews did, the way the Muslims are highly unified. So there's a problem we have at our end. So there's too much opportunism among the Hindu leaders. That's, I think, reason why we are easy target.
Well, thank you, sir. And let's go on to the next question. The idea is to answer questions from viewers. Arun wants to know, is there an Asian Roman Empire coming into existence with the church being the organizing institution? From South Korea, Japan to India, there seems to be slow convergence.
So I don't think it's an Asian Roman Empire. I mean, you mean Rome's empire, Asia division of their empire? Yeah, that is true. I mean, first of all, calling the church, the Catholic Church, part of the extension of the Roman Empire is very correct. It's a very good use of the term. Roman Empire never died. They say the end of the Roman Empire. It morphed into the church. It morphed you see, without physical weapons and, soldiers, I mean, the evangelists became the new soldiers. And so the Roman Empire lives as the church, the Vatican, which is inside the Rome anyway. And through that, they have a huge clout. The largest sales force in the world is all the priests. Largest money-making machinery, which doesn't have to pay taxes anywhere, doesn't have to disclose and file any information returns anywhere. I mean, imagine because God sanctioned it apparently, or so you claim, you get away with no disclosure, no taxation, diplomatic rights you have. Vatican has got diplomatic immunity in countries. It's got diplomatic status, membership in the United Nations. Come on. I mean, this is greater than more grand than the Roman Empire was during its time. So there is a kind of a church church is a morphed version of the Roman Empire. I certainly agree with that. And whether it's coming together in Asia in a big way, Japan, South Korea, and India. But remember that in India, I don't know about the other. I think it's true in the others also. It's not the Roman Catholic Church; it's the Protestant churches.
Yes,
And the
yes, yes.
Protestant churches are not England. I mean, not Roman. They are churches of other countries. There's England, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Baptists. There's churches of all these. The Episcopalians are the English, and Presbyterians, I think, are Scottish. So the different the different Protestant churches are from different kingdoms in Europe, and not Rome. Rome would be the Catholics, but I don't have the latest statistics. My hunch is that the spread of Christianity in South Korea, Japan, and India is not predominantly Catholic.
No, that's true. That's true. In fact, they say that they, in fact, try to convert their own. In other words, the Catholics are also being converted to other newer denominations. That's another. Anyway, that's a topic for a different day. Let's go to the next question, please. Raghunandan wants to know: Anglo-Saxon Empire is still alive, and they have to pay the price of colonization. Hang on, sir. Includes USA and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and UK and their citizens. Your view on it?
See, there is a moral argument and then there's a pragmatic argument. Morally, you can say, yeah, I mean, they have captured all this land, they've captured North America. A small amount of people out of Europe, they've captured North America and Australia, New Zealand, etc. And so much of the land, percent of the land and wealth controlled by such a small percent of the population. You can say that as moral argument. But pragmatically, they'll say, to hell with you. So what? We have it. Its might is right. So power-wise, power comes from military, comes from economic might. So the argument about the future, whether the Western people will retain their market share or not, is not about dharma or morality. It's about pragmatics. And I think they will shrink. They are shrinking. If you look at the Western world, it's peaked. And its share of global GDP and so on is shrinking. Unfortunately, it's not India that's growing up, it's China. And so I think what you are seeing is the replacement of the West as the leaders of the world power, which has been the case for 500 years or so, less than 500 years. Replacement of that with China-centric, Greater China. And they'll swallow up Taiwan and maybe do a deal with Korea, North Korea, and all that. I think this is where we are headed. Unfortunately for India, because India is neither. We accuse the United States of all kind of things in the Western world of oppression and all that. But then where we are headed is something even worse, which is China. China has no love for India. You can be sure of that. And all this baloney that they are Buddhists and we are Buddhists and we are the home of the Buddha, they love us. That is what happened when President Xi chose after he became president. The first country he wanted to visit was India, and we said this will be great. We'll solve all our problem. We'll do this Jula, and we've taken him to in the Bangalore or someplace. We're meeting in a Buddhist monastery. All misreading. We had our foreign affairs people had zero understanding of what was going on in China, what was really all about, and we just misread the whole thing. So we should be honest about it. This new geopolitical reality is not necessarily in favor of India. We like to think it is, that we'll create a third front. Like in India, they're trying to create a third front. It's not so easy to do in geopolitics. The United States camp and the China camp fighting each other. Unfortunately, that's the way things will be. Russia, unfortunately for the United States, has been pushed over to the Chinese camp, which I wish had not happened. Where is India going to be? Where is it dancing here and there? And can we say we'll create our own front? It's not that easy to do.
Yes, indeed. Next question from Arvind TSY. Dr. Malhotra had interviewed Joel Finkelstein of Princeton on using AI for tracking Hindophobic content. Would it be possible to bring them together with you on PGurus? Arvind, we already had Joel Finkelstein, Dr. Finkelstein, about 1 year ago or more than that. We had the first findings out of Rutgers universities were shared on PGurus. And I'll be happy to bring Joel back on our channel. And Rajiv ji, you're welcome also, sir. I mean, this is something that I'll let you finish your 4-part series, finish that, and then afterwards, perhaps we can have a look at this. Look, these Rajiv ji, me, we are all very complimentary in terms of what we offer to you as a viewer.
Yeah. Yes.
You can go watch Rajiv ji's videos. I watch them for a lot of things, and you learn. In order to say one word, I have to, in order to write one word, I have to read 10 words. That is a typical amount of research that needs to go in before you can write. As a writer, I can tell you this. I'm sure Rajiv ji will also agree with me. You have to read a lot. And today, reading is also like listening YouTube videos. It's similar stuff. So,
just to let people know, I'm having a large gathering at my house, dinner event on Sunday, exactly a week from today, Sunday the 14th. 100 guests are have confirmed, and this is by invitation only. It's not open to regular, and we're bringing together the people who've supported the foundation in the best way. And some people are coming from India, some are coming from Canada, 8 or 9 people, some Washington, Bay Area, Texas, Seattle, all of that. So, and New York. So Joel is going to be one of them, and Asra Nomani, whom I've just interviewed several times, you might have seen her. She's also coming. She's coming with an entourage of 5 or 6 people also. So we're bringing a whole new energy. And there are many things that we're not going to discuss at this time publicly, but we're discussing privately many, many kinds of initiatives. So yeah, I think making an appearance with Joel is fine. I mean, we're probably going to do more than the 4-part series anyway.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. Yeah. Next question from Rajdeep Roy. When will we get back our pride, Samantak Mani, Kohinoor again? Is there even that possibility? Why are you asking me? Ask Rajiv ji. I mean, I don't know the answer. Please go ahead, sir. What is your thoughts?
See, I think Kohinoor is a sort of symbol, but it's not the biggest biggest item of wealth. The biggest item of wealth is huge. I mean, you look at the total amount that they've looted, Kohinoor is not even 0.1% of the total wealth. It's just a symbolic thing because it's on their crown, Queen Elizabeth's crown and whatnot. So it's a very easy target for us, but we should be asking for a lot more. We should be asking for a huge amount of wealth returned back to India from Britain. To start with, things that won't cost them any money without actual money. There is so much information there. There's so much in the in the archives. There are so many things of spiritual value, historical value, which are not talking about big diamond and gold and all that, which belong in India, in the Indian museums and Indian archives and Indian scholars. These things are not even openly available. We have to go fight to get access. Dharampal had to go fight and sit in the libraries in London and manually copy because they wouldn't let him take these things back. So I think that our government needs to do a more aggressive job about the return of civilizational artifacts that Britain is holding for a long time.
Next question, please. Prashant Gupta wants to know, what is the role of Church of England in these ceremonies, and more importantly in the British politics and establishment, which I think is not much highlighted, the role of Church of England?
Church of England is the one who did the ceremony. Church of England is the one who does the coronation. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the head of, and he reports to now King Charles III. So King Charles III is the head of the Church of England. It's also called Anglican Church. Now, if you want a little bit about it, the background is that they used to be Roman Catholics. So theologically, philosophically, they are closer to the Catholics than they are to the Protestants. But they became Protestant because the king violated what the rules were about marriage and whatnot, all kind of scandals happened. So he violated the rules of the Catholics, and therefore he had to abdicate that role and become a Protestant. So the Church of England is a product of a royal family scandal. Okay, and so this royal family scandal, sort of like they say Donald Trump scandal and all that. So this kind of royal family scandals of that kind created this bifurcation. Okay, so that is what the whole background is. So that is why there is such a thing as Church of England, and it's also called Anglican Church. The monarch previously was the Queen. Now it's King Charles III is the official head of the church. So when they tell you separation of church and state, you can confidently tell them that in your own country, the head of state, who is the monarch, King Charles III, is also the head of the Church of England.
Neeraj Kulkarni wants to know, now in a sense, many Western countries build grand narratives, brand building very meticulously, whereas they tarnish India brand, India story. How can this be successfully combated?
Well, right now Shri and I are combating it by poking, into them and saying, hey, listen, guys, you are hypocrites. Your grand narrative is a bunch of all kind of loot from various places and human rights violations and exaggerations about greatness and mythology and all that. And it's also completely double talk because you're not giving other cultures their right to have their rituals and their stories and enactment and all that. You're always making fun of it. Your BBC is going after these other countries, especially India. So we are doing in our own way as private citizens what we can do. Beyond that, where are the gurus, Hindu gurus? Why are they just enjoying the good life and staying out of controversy? Why aren't they sticking their neck out and doing it? What about the government? What about the Ministry of External Affairs? What about the High Commission? All those kind of people. I'll be, by the way, in England in the first half of June for 7 or 8 events, public events here and there, which I'll announce later on. So I want to raise all these things.
That brings us to a close of what I would call as a very soul-searching for them and revealing for us a conversation between Rajiv ji and me and viewers. I hope you understand where we are coming from. If you live in a glass house, don't throw stones at others. And we are also asking them to introspect. I think this should be the last such grand ceremony, especially when Britain is really reeling under the taxation right now, inflation imposed as well as the war imposed taxation, and they need to really think about whether they should have had this kind of pomp and splendor. Thank you very much, Rajiv ji, and I look forward to having more sessions with you, sir. This is certainly not my normal conversational stuff. You opened our eyes to a lot of things that perhaps we know, but we don't know. This is the thing about now. We are consuming information on the surface. We are never going down into the little bit of depth to understand the bigger picture. I think you gave us that bigger picture today. Thank you once again, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar.